Welcome to Podiatry Unfiltered. This is the podcast where we skip the sugarcoating and talk honestly about what it takes to survive and thrive as an independent podiatrist today. I'm sharing the real stories and the hard lessons and the strategies that actually work. No corporate polish, no fake perfection. This podcast dives into the truth about independent podiatry. Hi guys, it's Michele McGowan from Podiatry Unfiltered. And this is a pretty early morning podcast, so I'm still like in my pajamas. But this podcast, I wanted to get out there before I head to Fort Lauderdale this weekend. This weekend, I'm headed to Fort Lauderdale for the ACPPS Regenerative Medicine Summit. You know, if you don't know what the ACPPS is, it's the American College of Podiatric Physicians and Surgeons. And this is a group of doctors that's on the forefront of implementation of quality products and services that are not just good for your patients, but also good for you and your practice and your bottom line. I have never followed the compass of following the money, so I don't want it to be taken that, oh, this is just how you make money. No, because I think I have a very strong moral compass. So I don't do anything that won't help my patients first, because that's our job. You know, do no harm, and you should be helping your patients, not just adding things because you want to make money. So I just want to make that really clear. But that's why it's important to actually get certified in and following groups like the ACPPS. You know, if you are not going to conferences like this, you're just going to the same old conferences where you're learning the same exact techniques to fix a peroneal tendon, the techniques to fix an Achilles tendon. Yes, some of this changes a little bit over the years, but if you want to be on the forefront of what's happening in podiatry right now, then I really highly recommend you going to one of these regenerative certification summits. I think the next one is in Arizona. This one was sold out, and it was sold out quickly. I do feel like that's important for people to understand that if you're a podiatrist just sitting and waiting to see what happens, I've been there before. I've definitely waited on things. I've dragged my feet on things. This is not something you need to drag your feet on. This is something you should be jumping in. It costs very little for you to actually educate yourself on something new. You shouldn't be just learning the same things over and over again. I've gone to conferences and just fallen asleep. I've gone to conferences and just sat there in the room with my headphones in, watching videos, because it's the same stinking lecture on how to repair a calcaneal fracture. It's just, so no shade on those doctors that are presenting there, because I think they're all pretty brilliant people. But you should also be looking at what else is out there. How else? Because I will share anecdotally, and this happens a lot in my practice. In the last year, just, you know, I have people, this happens, I can tell you countless stories, but like this week, I had a patient come into my office. It's like a 58-year-old diabetic male who sees another podiatrist like 5 miles from me, not that far. And he said, listen, I've been seeing this guy for years. I have neuropathy. He's not discussed anything with me. I looked at your website. I see that you have a laser. I see that you have soft wave. I see that you recommend certain supplements that can help patients. He's like, and my doctor's never even talked to me about these things. And I talked to the guy. I actually talked to him about getting his hemoglobin A1C under control before he actually goes for anything, because that's also our job, not just to sell people things. He's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. We talked about an exercise program for him. We talked about him working on his nutrition. He's going to follow up in 3 months with me. And if his hemoglobin C is better and he's still having symptoms, we're going to do the laser. And he's all excited about it. He's going back to his other podiatrist to cut his toenails. So that's something to think about. And I really think we don't realize our patients, they're on the internet. I think we all realize. I didn't mean to say we don't realize. We all realize our patients are on the internet. They're looking, hey, what does this person do? And I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I've heard other people echo what I've said in the past, which is, you have such an advantage over doctors if you are an independent podiatrist. Again, no shade on my fellow doctors and podiatrists who work for private equity, who work for hospital systems, but they can't do what we can do. So if you work by yourself or you're in a group where you have some autonomy and you have some say, these are things you should be looking into, because the patients are looking. Every day, our Google My Business page, it gets updated with facts, videos. It gets updated with little blog articles on what we do in our practice. And it's all the stuff that's the regenerative medicine stuff. So people are looking. So if you think they're not looking and you're going to continue to practice the same way, you're going to lose patients, or you are just going to be cutting their toenails. and they're going to become the doctors like me who are putting all of our information out there. Again, the big thing is go to the conferences, learn, see what you think you can implement into your practice. And like I always say, choose one thing. I've been a victim in the past of myself, my own victim, where I like bring everything in. And then that is how things like dust piles up on a laser or whatever. You have to know idea. You have to take it a little bit at a time, but going to these conferences makes a big deal. So I do have to say though, that just think about that. A lot has changed in podiatry over the last 20 years. But if you're going to conferences where they're still talking about the same old, it's time to look at other conferences. You still got to go. I say this all the time. You still got to go to, your APMA, your ACPPS, your conferences that, you get some nice scientific CME on. I just went to the FPMA one. It was great, But the FPMA one had a whole section. I was impressed. It had a whole section on the regenerative medicine. I've been thinking a lot lately about this. I feel like I graduated in a version of podiatry that doesn't exist. It didn't really exist when I graduated. The doctors that trained me, they were incredible surgeons, incredible clinicians, but I feel like they came from what I would call the golden era of podiatry. We've all heard of the golden era of podiatry. I'm sure even like the younger people in their residencies right now, there's probably some old guy that's like, oh yeah, I used to get paid $3,000 for a bunion, and the person would stay in the hospital for a week. I've never existed in that version of podiatry. But they were doing bunions. Patients were staying in the hospital for a week, and they were getting paid. They were getting paid way more than $300 or $400 for a bunion. So when I walked out of those residency doors in Pittsburgh, I was just thinking, yeah, we're going to make tons of money. That's not how it works. These doctors, though, they came from a time where that existed. And then there was us. We came out of residency, and you're lucky if you get $350 for the same surgery that those doctors during the golden era were getting $1,000+. And nobody really wants to talk about that shift. You will go through your residency and you will go through your schooling, and nobody talks about that business part of it. They should. During residency, nobody was teaching us how to survive it. They were like, this is how you do a bunion. This is how this is how you do this. This is how you do this. That is good because you needed to learn the techniques, but there needed to be more. Maybe that information that could push you in the right direction. And I want to be fair when I say that. I really want to be fair when I say this, because it's easy to say we didn't have mentorship. But the truth is, the people training us didn't know business either. And that's really apparent when you look back from even where some of these people are now. A lot of them inherited practices. They came from families of physicians. They stepped into systems that were already working. I think, and then here we are, a lot of us first generation doctors, no roadmap, no business training, no understanding of reimbursement. It was kind of like, just go be a good doctor. Like, that should work out. Listen, being a good doctor is not enough. It's important, because if you're not a good doctor, you're not going to make it either. But that's the part nobody says out loud. So like, what happened next? What happened after we leave these places? Like, when we left, reimbursements dropped, costs went up, continually goes up. And a lot of really good podiatrists, they struggle. Some of the doctors that we worked for or we did our residency with, some failed. Some ended up having to close their practices, work for a hospital system. Some ended up working for other podiatrists. A lot of guys, I feel like in my residency, they were just encouraged. Like, it wasn't even, I remember saying I wanted to open my own practice. And I remember people thinking, oh, she's just silly. Even like where I did my residency, my husband had another year of residency to go. He had a 3-year surgical program. And when I said I was going to leave and open my practice, I think they thought I was crazy. Like, oh, no. I even got offered a job to stay. And I'm like, I'm not taking some shitty money to stay here where I can start my life and I can start the foundation of my practice. And it actually worked out really well because my husband still had a year of residency. So he had insurance for us. That worked out. And a little bit of, this is not like a lot of money, but a little bit of money was coming in. So we took out a loan, we started the practice, and I think they were a little bit in shock. But that's how it is. You have to stick to your guns. I know that for me, I've talked about this in the past, I'm not employable. Like, I do things my own way for a reason, not employable, but that's not a bad thing. So I've talked to actually a lot of younger podiatrists, and I have a couple people I have to get emails back to, and I will this week. But I've talked to a lot of younger podiatrists who they didn't realize this is an option just to open your own practice, because that's just not how it's presented. The guys that I did my residency with, that was their thing. They're like, oh no, interviewing here, here, and here. And I had 3 co-residents that were all interviewing at places while I was like making a business plan. And I know they thought I was silly. But I was making my business plan. I flew out to Florida during my Christmas magic time that I had time off. And I looked at buildings in January when I was going to open a practice in August. I signed a lease. The guy was really nice. I signed a lease that started in June. So I had 1 month of rent I paid before I actually got down here. But I found the cheapest place I could, small. And I only signed a 1-year lease, which I don't know if that exists anymore, but I feel like it does. And just to get our feet wet. And I think we stayed in that property for 3 years. Then we moved into a bigger space. Things are always possible. You just have to plan them. But yeah, but all the guys that I did my residency with, they're like flying all over interviewing. And I was just like, nope, this is what I'm doing. And I think I still believe, I believe in private practice. I did then as much as I do now today. And this is after being through 25 years of it. And I think it hasn't always been easy, but it's been very gratifying. And this is where I'm probably a little different, because I still believe strongly in private practice. Not just for the money, that's not it, but for the life. I mean, I have 3 kids. I have 2 in college, 1 still at home. And I can honestly say, Tim, that's my husband, and we were there. We were home for dinner every night. We went to all the soccer games, all the track meets, all of it. And I'm not saying people who work for somebody else don't do that, but I didn't stress over it. And we worked hard. We worked really, really hard. And we built something that allowed us to do both. I think that matters. And I do want to I listen to other business podcasts. I listened to somebody interviewing a guy who was in business. And he said, whenever, I said, just for my male cohorts out there, this is not a female problem. Like, this is something where quality of life and kids and all of that are important. But I was listening to a podcast, and the guy said whenever he meets another entrepreneur who doesn't value the family aspect, whether it's male or female, he said this, and I think it's really true. Your kids are not going to remember, I'm going to quote him, but with something podiatry related. He said, your kids are not going to remember how many bunions you did. They're not going to remember your RVUs. They're not going to remember your production bonuses. They're going to remember if you were there. And for me, that's everything. So family is important. People don't talk about that. People think, that's the weak part of it. No, that is one of the most fantastic parts about being in practice by yourself. Being in practice and being an independent podiatry practice, that is probably one of the best things, because there are going to be ups and downs. But if you work for somebody, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs as well. So being able to control that environment is important. So if you're listening to this and you're a resident, or you're a few years out and you're thinking, what did I do? I feel stuck. I feel like I got screwed. Get it? But I'm going to tell you something really important. You didn't make the wrong decision. You were just given, you weren't given the full picture. Because the game is not about seeing more patients. And it's not about grinding harder. It's about building smarter. You don't need more volume. You need more value per patient. And that's one of the things that me and my partner, which is my husband, talk about all the time. So value per patient is important. I'm kind of off my soapbox about regenerative medicine. I'm a little bit off my soapbox about why private practice, I think, it's not dead. But I want to talk a little bit about ways that you can make your practice more profitable in an ethical way. And that's kind of like my whole shtick, right? Like, I think there are so many great things out there. Like I said, super plug to the ACPPS, Regenerative Medicine Summits. I think that's super important. I use a lot of the different modalities that I've learned become certified with regenerative medicine, between peptides, EPMX, liposana, but I got the Remy laser. I got 2 Remy lasers we use in our both offices. And when we're seeing patients at the same time, I say this all the time, there's not a day that goes by that Remy lasers are not running all day, or the soft wave is not clicking in the background. One of us is using that. We only have 1 soft wave right now. And these have been game changers for our patients. But one of the game changers I always talk about, because it brings so much value to when we package things for our patients, is the 3D printing custom orthotics. And that is one of my passions. People know that. So we have a Facebook group for 3D. It's called 3D Custom Orthotic. This was my first Facebook group I ever started, so it's not that great of a name, but it's 3D Custom Orthotics, Revolutionize Your Podiatry Practice. I do not sell anything. Again, I've talked about this in the past. I'm not sponsored by anybody. This is just like my own little thing to help other podiatrists get that incorporated into their practice. So if you're not part of our 3D Custom Orthotics, Revolutionize Your Podiatry Practice, great group to be in. Nobody's selling anything. We just kind of riff ideas off each other. Somebody's like, hey, how do you do this? This is how you do it. Somebody has an answer. In the beginning, I was that somebody, but it's grown and it's pretty fabulous because other people are like, hey, I got this cooling plate. Anyway, if you don't do 3D printing custom orthotics, this, if you're interested in at least, join that Facebook group. I'm the person that lets people in. I only let nice podiatrists in who are actually interested in that endeavor. The other Facebook group I do have is the Independent Podiatrist Network. So these are groups you can absolutely join. The only thing I do is I just check to make sure you're really a podiatrist, because I really don't want any vendors in there. I don't sell anything. I just want everybody to be able to collaborate and bounce ideas off of each other. If you're interested in joining one of those two groups, but I kind of want to shift gears a little bit in this podcast. We've talked about the laser, we've talked about soft wave, we talked about, all these different modalities we do and we've added to our practice. I want to talk about 3D printed custom orthotics, because I feel like that is something that has added a ton of value. And if I had to point out the one thing that has completely changed my practice is 3D printed orthotics. And I will stop there for a second and just say that when I was in school, they did a lot of orthotics, and I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to heal people with surgery. I remember getting to my residency and nobody did orthotics. It was just we got there, we rounded on patients, we did surgery, we did other rotations. It was just this cycle of surgery patients. I don't think I ever saw any of the guys who were the big time guys in our practice. They just sent everything out, I believe. I don't ever remember seeing anybody cast it or dispensed orthotics. I could be wrong. There may have been a couple. It wasn't a lot. And then I got into, kind of a little backstory on orthotics for me. I got into my private practice. I'm like, you know what? People are coming in asking for orthotics. So then I started to work with a couple different labs, and I hated orthotics. For the first 5 years of practice, I tried really hard to incorporate orthotics into my practice because I knew that was something patients were going to come in and ask for, but also something that you could make a little money off of. I was spending, anywhere, depending on the orthotic, $80 to $180 for a pair of orthotics, dispense them to the patient. The patient would complain, had to send them back, and it was weeks at a time, and patients get pissed at you. And then the insurance piece, that all sucked. So I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. So I took a hiatus from doing orthotics in my practice from I want to say 2007 till 2021. I mean, post-COVID. It was post-COVID when I was like, and I think everybody post-COVID, we're all looking for things how can we change? How can we make it better? But that's when I started doing the 3D printing custom orthotics. And in the beginning, it was a little bit challenging. Now it's 2026. I have it so dialed in, it's crazy. But I don't there's multiple companies I've tried. The company that I do use is OLT. I'm not sponsored by them. So ask me any questions. I'll let you know, good, bad, ugly. But if you join that 3D custom orthotic group, you can learn a little bit more as well. But again, so if you're out there and you're like, I freaking hate orthotics because the headache of it, this might be your call to maybe try again. But I'm going to say something that may ruffle some people's feathers, but let me see. I don't want to gatekeep this information because the reality is it's not that complicated. You could figure out. It's literally not that hard. And you can get started. Realistically, at the company I use, I got started for less than $2,000. At the time, and I'm not 100% sure, again, I'm not sponsored by them, but at the time, these are all the things that were included. I got the 3D printer, a couple of spools of filament, a dryer for the filament, top covers, everything I needed, I got. And I charged $550 for a pair of orthotics. And some insurances, I don't love working with insurances, So I do pick and choose. If somebody wants to use their insurance, I give them a prescription because I'm like, you're not going to get the same quality product that I can offer because I can't risk your insurance not paying us. So anybody that wants to use their insurance, I have a virtual assistant that's in the Philippines, like a lot of us do, and she verifies all of the person's insurances. So I'm very fair to my patients. What I say to them is, and her name's Gladys, which I think is adorable because it makes her sound like she's 100 and she's really like 23, and she's amazing. I have to say, I know people are not always happy with virtual assistants. I'm very happy with my virtual assistant. But the patients come in, I'm very fair to my patients. I'll say, okay, I do think that a custom orthotic would be a good idea for you. A lot of patients come in asking for that, but then you're the one that has to determine, do they need it? Will it help them? Will it improve their condition? So when people want them or deem it medically necessary, the first thing I do is I shoot a little message over to Gladys and I say, this person's interested in using their insurance for orthotics, and Gladys will get on the phone, call, whatever, and she finds out. And then she'll send me a message back, and then we let the patient know, no, your insurance doesn't cover it. And we also give the patients, like I see this all the time, patients say, or other podiatrists say they'll give the patient a form to call their insurance. I don't rely on that. I do give it to the patient with the codes, and I have very specific on there, like ask if this is only for diabetics. And it's very clear on that form for the patient to ask, but I also have Gladys check because it's very convenient to have her, she'll check. So when the patient comes back, and says, yeah, my insurance doesn't cover it, we then have the option. We have that conversation. If the patient says, my insurance covers it, they get a prescription. If they want to use their insurance, they get a prescription. But I think that's the easiest way. Patients are very amenable to that. Most people want to use their insurance if they can. And then there are certain insurances we don't take. So we've gone over the last couple of years to more like a hybrid practice. So when you're more hybrid, it's easy to say, hey, we don't take United Healthcare. And they're already coming in for an office that they have foot pain. And if they decide to do the orthotic, and sometimes with a package of something we do, regenerative, it's just such a nice adjunct to those things. But that being said, so the orthotics have been really great. And again, the buy-in, $1,900 for me. So it was less than $2,000. Like one spool of filament will make, depending on, like, for example, I wear an 8 size shoe. So for me, I can make roughly for women's, with one spool, I probably can make upwards of 10 or 12 pairs of orthotics for a size 8. And then you can Google how much a TPU filament is, all that jazz. It's not a huge buy-in for you. So like after I did 4 pairs of orthotics, it paid for the whole setup, and everything after that is pretty much profit. And I still charge less than the Good Feet store. So it's not like I'm charging them, $1,000. And then we have a lot of patients come back and buy a second pair of orthotics for $275. But yeah, it's profit. And when I get even patients, like if patients ask, because patients will ask me, I get very excited about the 3D printing. I'll explain the whole process. I'll explain what I do, explain the technology of scanning the foot, uploading it, and how we create the orthotic to their foot. Patients love that. But you're not overcharging. Just because it doesn't cost you $500 to make the orthotic doesn't mean that you're ripping anybody off. There's the professional component. Yeah, there's the professional component to, they're in the room. There's the office visit of you casting them for orthotics. There's the office visit for dispensing the orthotics, and then there's the physical product. And there's just the whole professional component of it. So you're not ripping anybody off. You shouldn't feel bad about that. Some people tell me that my price is actually too low. I have other patients that come in and they're like, oh my gosh, I paid $1,000 to the other guy, and this is way better. You're diagnosing the patient, you're prescribing, and you're adjusting if you need be. That matters, but they're also getting a lot of value from you, and they're getting it quicker because, right now, I don't know if it's too loud. It's just my home office. Like, I am a crazy person. I have 5 3D printers in my home office, and I have 2 at the office. But that's only because, there's 2 of us. We probably do, a nice amount of orthotics, and I don't want to ever have to not be able to give a patient the orthotics the next day. So call me crazy. I'm crazy. But yeah, it's important for us to be able to get these things dispensed to patients in a timely manner. But that's also what they're paying for. They're paying for that service. It's a white glove service when you're 3D printing orthotics. And I know it probably does sound crazy that I have the 3D printers at home, but I'm busy when I'm in the clinic. I talk about this in the past, but I don't see 40 people in a day. I saw 40 people in a day. I think I went back in time because I think that's too many people to really be able to give quality care to and be able to talk about the higher level services. So I don't see that many people in a day. I don't think that's necessary. I think if you're seeing 40 people in a day, you're probably seeing a lot of shitty patients too. Sorry. But the 3D printing, I do it here because I can come home, I can put dinner on and hit print on the printers for the whatever the orthotics. And that is way better to me than going to the hospital. Oh God, going to the hospital, getting bumped by urology for your case, and then still you're not even making $400. I digress. Anyway, but yeah, I think that the 3D printing is, that should be what you should be adding to your practice. You should be adding that right now. It's such a cheap buy-in. You get used to like having that conversation about a higher end service for your patient. Medicare doesn't cover functional custom orthotics for patients. So if you're like, in my area, I live in Central Florida. So we have a very fair share of active adults who are Medicare age. We get all these pickleball players. We have these people who run 5Ks every week, and it's a different kind of old person. It's the kind of old person I want to be. But these people come in and they ask for orthotics. So, and it's not covered and they're happy to pay it. We have patients who buy like 4 extra pairs of orthotics because they're too lazy to move them from shoe to shoe. That is I hate this term, but that is my ideal patient avatar because I like that a lot. But I want to walk you through this because this is where people overcomplicate it. All you do is you scan the foot. I use my iPhone with a little mirror attachment, which was included in the company that I use. They sent that as well. So it's a little mirror attachment. It uses the facial recognition of the iPhone. This literally takes minutes to do in my office. And, I just position the foot, have them relax their foot. I position their foot in a subtalar joint neutral. And I say, can you hold it like this? Which probably will drive every biomechanics expert up the wall. But I think in the last 6 years, I've had one person return orthotics. And I was like, hey, you're not happy. We tried a couple different things and I returned them their $550. I was happy with that. They were happy. I mean, they knew I tried. But to all the biomechanic experts out there, I will tell you, fantastic, reproducible results, people happy with your orthotics. And all I do is I position them, put them in subtalar joint neutral, have them at 90. I say, can you hold your foot like this? And they say yes. And I would say most people can. If they can't, I'll have somebody in my office staff like load that 5th metatarsal and I just kind of keep an eye on it. But yeah, I scan from the heel up with my phone. I go medial, lateral, and it literally takes that long. I'm done. The next thing I do is the company that I use has a little online app, so I upload it to that with a prescription. The prescription is pretty standard. I check the boxes I want. I print, most of the orthotics I print off full length, only because once it's printed off, I put the patient's name on the bottom, inscribe it. It looks really nice. I can't show you that for HIPAA reasons, and then I put a top cover on, and the patient's super happy. Yeah, what I do is I upload the prescription with all the little things I want. If I want a met pad or I want whatever, I will say 90% of the time, I don't do anything different. Like the file they give me is the file I use, unless I'm like, ooh, I think I need to shift this offload a little bit. But it's not a big me learning CAD/CAM software so that I can become an expert on doing it all myself. And unless there's something really specific, I don't change their file they give me back because most of the time it's perfect. After I scan the foot, I wait about within like 30 minutes, the company that I use gets the file, they email me the file back. It's funny. I feel like this part makes me laugh a little bit because all you do is open this slicing software. It's just software it's like opening your printer, say, like the printer you print paper on. I open the printer and you know how you would normally go and upload your Word file to print. All I do is I open the orthotic file and I put it on what's called the print bed. And the orthotic drops on the print bed or the built plate, and basically I hit print. That's as easy as it gets. It's super simple. Like I said, I do a little bit more. I'll engrave on the bottom of the orthotic the patient's name. My husband, he does not like to put top covers. So every single patient, he gets an orthotic, no top cover. I like top covers. I think they're fun. I think they're gushy. So depending, I use like a 2 millimeter or 3 millimeter EVA foam. I don't glue. I'm not about that life. I use this stuff. This is 3M 300 LSE. It's a tape. And all I do is I take the foam. So I take the foam, I take the tape, I put the foam on the tape, and then I put that, it peels off. I put it on the orthotic. The amount of work that this takes, I have two college students. I'm sorry, now I have three college students that are all taking gap years right now. One's going to become a PA, one's going to become a nurse. She hopes to be a nurse practitioner, and the other is going on to medical school. I have taught all of them how to do this. Kind of, that's also part of it. You know, like, you don't want to be your own bottleneck for things. I think Peter Wishney says that all the time. He's right. But I also still have fun doing it. So like I print them here and I'll bring them there for those guys to do. And then I've shown them how to print and engrave there. But it's kind of like my hobby. Like, people print dragons and stuff. So like, if I print orthotics and I make money off it, I think it's okay. But yeah, you just hit print and that's it. It prints. It takes, if I'm being honest, like, it takes, depending on the size, like this orthotic, this lady's got a big foot. It's probably like a woman's size 10. So that took 6 hours to print for the pair. I was able to squish them on the same little build plate, which is nice. I have some printers that have bigger build plates, but I have to say, this bamboo printer does print really nice each time. But that's really it. It's easier than printing a prescription. Goes right to the printer and boom, it's done. Like I said, your staff can do it. You don't have to sit there and babysit it. It's so easy. And the thing is, you know, they can hit print and you can keep seeing your next patient, or you can hit print and you can see your next patient. It's not that hard. You can create a system in your office where once you show them how to do it, they'll become experts after 3 pairs of orthotics. It's not that hard. The other piece of it is that they're doing something actually that they feel is kind of cool. So it's kind of neat. But yeah, it's I think if you're going to add anything to your practice, like right away, this is something people don't always come in and say, hey, I want a shot of this, or I need this. Those are things you have to educate people on. But these are things that people are coming into your office. I can tell you, I lost out on hundreds of thousands. I've been in practice 25 years. I have lost out on hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue by not providing the service until the last 6 years. I'm telling you right now, it's, you are young and you are in your residency and you say, I'm going to heal with steel. Trust me, yes, you're going to have a great surgical professional life, but you should be adding this. This is, you know, this is something that, again, not everybody needs orthotics, but people are going to come in who want them and need them, and you should be providing it because you're a podiatrist, and this is something podiatrists do. So I have to say, why am I so passionate about this? I think it's because this is control. This is something that never leaves your office. You control the quality. You control the turnaround time. You control the overall experience that the patient has. And most importantly, you create value for your patient and your practice. So it's the patient wins and the practice wins. You can't get better than that when it comes to something that you're adding to your practice. And listen, I'm not perfect. I'm still figuring this out. Like, if anybody follows me on Podiatry Unfiltered on Instagram, I haven't put it on my personal. I think I put it on Independent Podiatrist and on the 3D printing group. I had 2 of my printers this weekend. I really do believe my cleaning lady hit the power cord, but I can't prove that because 2 printers, when I got back from printing the whole entire, I can show you, it's crazy, the whole entire where it prints from. Now, this is not to scare you because I was able just to unattach it, and I bought just a new one of these and put it back on. I could show you a picture of that. But yeah, this happened to me. And even with this happening, this was a minor inconvenience and probably wasted maybe $2 worth of material. It did suck to have to take it apart, but it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. But even with that disaster, so like I said, I'm still figuring things out. Even with that disaster, I'm not discouraged in any way, shape, or form. Again, the printers, if you were to buy the printer that I have that's running right now, I think it's like $400 on Amazon. It's not that expensive. It's just you can't figure out all the there's some people in my group that have bought like printers and then they're trying to like retrofit or figure it out. I think you can have, there's a company I think called the Print It Foot where you can use any printer, any 3D printer. I haven't not used that company yet. I want to play around with it a little bit. I just haven't had the time. But that's like, you'd have to go with them. I believe. I use OLT and they've been really nice to me when I've kind of played around with other printers, but I don't think you can start that relationship with your own printer. I feel like there's something to that. But I'm going to mess up a million times in my career when it comes to different things. It's just how it happens. But the part of it is just owning something. And I would take that every single time over being stuck in a system where I have no control. So if you're out there and you're feeling stuck, just know this. There's a way to build this differently. And you don't have to wait 20 years to figure it out like I did. I hope that helps you. There's no linear path for everybody. The road to success, they say, looks like this. It's not a straight line. If this resonated with you, share it with somebody who needs to hear it. If you are interested, again, of joining any of our groups, we have the Independent Podiatrist Network on Facebook. I have the 3D printing group for custom orthotics. It's like 3D printing, 3D custom orthotics. Revolutionize your podiatry practice. And then finally, again, my shameless plug for ACPPS. If you are not looking into the regenerative medicine, if you are a resident right now in a surgical program and the doctors you're working with are not even looking at this stuff, you need to go out on your own. If you have money that's allotted to go to a conference, they might scoff at you a little bit, but I would say this is your future. This is your life, and you want to make sure you take control of it. Again, you don't want to wait 20 years to be like, wow, I could have been doing something different. I am not poo-pooing surgery at all. I love that. Was a very great part of my career, for my profession, for a very long time. I have had many different hats I've worn. I've been a wound care center doc for, a couple of years at a nice little chunk of my time. I feel like I've lived a million lives. That's, I think, one of the best things about our career too, before I end, is saying that our profession is one, I say it all the time. I even like these college kids that are working for me, I'm like, guys, you should be a podiatrist. This is like the best freaking job ever. So I think we have a fantastic profession. I think podiatry is one where we can continue to outpace even some of our other counterparts because we're willing to take chances. Anyway, this is Michele McGowan, Podiatry Unfiltered. I hope you enjoyed this early morning podcast, my casual, just woke up podcast. I hope to see some of you guys. If any of you guys are at the ACPPS conference, Regenerative Summit this weekend, please chitty chat with me. I'd love if you have any questions about 3D printing. If you have any questions about incorporating things like Liposana or DPMX into your practice, let me know. I'd be more than happy to talk with you. These are just things I think all of us independent groups that can implement quicker, we should have in our practice. Again, I just think do the one thing that speaks to you. Okay.